Hello, this is Michael Wojcik with the Rochester City Council update for Monday, May 18th, 2015. Got done at about 11:15 p.m. tonight, so not terrible by our standards, but wanted to give you an update on a number of items. Committee of the Whole, we just had a couple of departmental updates, and one of the things that I did like out of the department updates was that I did learn that we pay $93 per citizen for our park system every year. That is a pretty good deal in my book, and I'm quite happy with that. It's unfortunately the Parks Department has been squeezed in the name of a number of other things for 20 years, and it's something that we're going to have to address in the long run. But we do have a pretty great park system. Second issue, we did do a bond issuance and a bond refinance today. The City of Rochester was reaffirmed at AAA by both ratings agencies, and our 24-month outlook is stable. So if you're not into finance, all you need to know is Rochester is as close to perfect in terms of financial management as you'd ever find in any city. The Energy Action Plan did pass and get funded. That'll go forward now, pass without comment. We did officially purchase the Chateau Theater today, and that was unanimous vote. We did unanimously, or those of us that did vote, funded the art study, and I commend the collaborative and the trust for coming together and drafting a really good agreement that addresses some of the shortcomings in terms of democratic participation in the arts within the trust. And we are putting $15,000 in towards this $30,000 study, and with the expectation that this work will continue and the terms of that agreement will be honored. The Greek Church did pass today. It's there was a question about whether or not the Kutsky plan called for a two-story requirement, and because it's an incentive development, it has to it has to meet the requirements of the underlying adopted plans. I actually abstained from the vote because we didn't have a decisive answer on that one at the city council level. And what I did find out, though, after coming home and checking some notes and going back, that's not an explicit requirement. It's supposed to mimic surrounding buildings, which do tend to be 2 stories. But since it's not an explicit requirement, the overall development is pretty good. I was frustrated that some of the details that just should be addressed in incentive development, things that just should be done out of decency for your neighbors when you're doing a project like this, like they have all their HVAC stuff on the roof, and they didn't put like any sort of screening up around it, which, I mean, if you're doing a baseline development, that's fine, but this is a development that's receiving incentive, so it goes above and beyond, and I think that they should have taken care of some of these details after the preliminary plat. I thought they were going to take care of these details. I hope they continue to work with the neighborhood, but the neighborhood was generally supportive of the project, but not supportive of kind of their lack of input or lack of coordination. And that led to a couple of changes that I put in place under other business. Basically 2 changes. Now when there's an incentive or restricted development, neighborhood meetings will be required. It's going to take some time to get that officially in place. And the other item was the... Gotta go back and check my notes right now. I'm blanking, which... You're okay with waiting for me right now, because if you're watching this video, you're such a huge nerd, you're just dying to know what the other one is anyway. The other one would be when there's a Type 3 Phase 3, which is a final plat, which comes back, and right now, there's a public meeting at the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it's not a public hearing. We had a note that went out that said public hearing, even though there wasn't a hearing. And some of these questions that came up at the last minute, and we were kind of stuttering over there, they could have been addressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission had there been a hearing there, but there wasn't, and hope to correct that now. Let's see. They also asked for a fee waiver, and I don't like doing fee waivers for nonprofits. It's not because I like to bully nonprofits. I'm sure somebody will come out and say that, but here's the thing. If they're asking to waive fees, and we don't just waive fees, the costs don't go away. The costs are the same either way. So you're making a decision. Do you want the development to pay the fees, or do you want the other taxpayers to pay the fees for the development? When you word it that way, that's why I don't like waiving fees for nonprofits. There are certain cases, and I don't remember if I supported it for the Boys and Girls Club, but if there's actually a public benefit for the work that they're doing. But in a lot of these cases, the issue is it's after the building is built, they're consuming public safety resources, public infrastructure resources, but nonprofits don't pay property taxes, so we're not actually getting any property tax revenue off the buildings in the future. And, some of the members live in the community, but residential property taxes don't typically even cover the cost for the residences themselves. So just from a fiscal responsibility level, I don't like waiving fees because every time you waive a fee, it's like passing a tax increase on everyone else, and I don't like that kind of behavior. And then, interestingly, the mayor was talking about vetoing that, which doesn't make sense for a number of reasons. One, it was a 7-0 vote, and two, if the council takes no action, it doesn't pass anyways. So even if the mayor vetoes it and we don't do anything, nothing happens. So I mentioned this, so I hope nothing comes of that. But I putting this on the back of other taxpayers is just not something I'm comfortable doing. Growlers, we did approve Sunday sales of growlers, and because it was unanimous, we suspended the rules and did a second reading. So actually, in the city of Rochester, this Sunday, you can go out and get your growler filled at your favorite local brewery, whether that be Grand Rounds or Kinney Creek or any of the other ones that are, I don't know if the other tap rooms are open yet, but I'm a big supporter of the brew industry here in Rochester, and as early as this Sunday, you can go out and get your growlers filled. Lastly, I think two more things. There's a TIF district for Pepsi Cola building a new facility here in Rochester, and I actually went into this kind of opposed because looking at the wage data, I didn't know if the wage data was really high enough, if these jobs were paying enough to justify any sort of true public benefit. Actually, the CEO was there and spoke, and I really appreciated hearing him. These jobs actually pay quite a bit more than the preliminary information that we got implied that they did. These are pretty much all living wage jobs, which is outstanding, and that tells me having these jobs in Rochester, there truly is some public benefit to it. And I think the other one too is that there's a but-for question where it's a prime site where they're building. Would somebody else build there? Would we still get that tax revenue if it wasn't Pepsi? And probably, but the amount that they're asking for is $800,000, which is about $180,000 over 5 years. Or I think it's spread over 9 years, so it's about a little under $100,000 per year. And for the amount of jobs that we're preserving in the community, the amount of economic development that's being done, I actually think that's a fairly good process. And I can tell you, half an hour before I made the vote in support of it, I did not support this at all. It was actually based on the testimony of the people there that said, no, I was wrong. This is a little bit better deal than I thought it was. Lastly, the big one for the night, a lot of people showed up. The long hearing was on Meadow Lakes, and there were three different things that were up. One was changing the land use plan, which is kind of what's generally allowed there. Second was changing the zoning, what specific densities and other types of things can be developed in these areas. And the third was a general development plan, kind of laying out where the roads are going to go, where the development would go. Not a lot of contention on the first and the third one. The general development plan steered clear of the floodplain, and also the land uses were reasonable. There's pretty broad discretion to come up with reasonable land uses. What wasn't, and where I took exception was, in order to change the zoning, you have to ensure what's going there is compatible with the surrounding area. And I've seen conceptually what the developer is proposing there, and conceptually it does fit the area pretty well. It seems pretty reasonable and pretty well thought out. The problem is when you change the zoning, and I heard it described as like a tattoo, it's there forever. And if a good developer has a piece of land zoned one way, they can do one thing with it. But if some other developer comes in that's perhaps a little bit sleazier, and we have a few sleazy ones in our community for sure, they can do whatever they want to do that fits in that district as well. And what the neighborhood was asking for was a special district, which we've done a number of times, to provide some assurances to the surrounding community that what they were being told was going to be built was going to actually be built. I was concerned over the compatibility, and I did not support the zone changes because of the compatibility. I wanted them to go back and do a special district. However, when it came back, the special district was they approved what was requested, the zoning change 6-1, which means that what's there is R3. Now, it's not the end of the world for surrounding neighbors because the people that are involved right now, the engineering firms, the partners, the developer, Paul Meyer, not one of these sleazy characters that we've dealt with, on a number of other projects quite frequently in some cases. This is, somebody that I actually respect and I think will do a good job. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to get hit by a bus tomorrow and who knows what happens. But what I told the neighborhood is there's hope for a really good project there, but we took the certainty away. There is no assurance that they're going to get what they said. But I think the message was made pretty clear, and there are additional hearings in the future, but they're only compared against the zoning, so anything that fits into an R3 is going to be approved in those areas. And you could get some pretty conceivably ugly things in an R3 that I wouldn't want anywhere near my neighborhood. But you can also do a lot of really great projects in an R3. And they did mix in a little commercial business, and I really like that. It's what we would call horizontal mixed use, where you have a mix of uses in the same area. It's wonderful for those of you that have a coffee shop that you can walk to. That's kind of what we're talking about with this concept, and I hope that I hope it works out as planned, because I think as planned it's a pretty good development. I think pretty high quality development. The other maybe stick that's out there a little bit too is this addresses one of the redevelopment areas. It doesn't probably address the one that's going to have a little bit more friction to it. And my hope is that we do come together and do something like a special district to really address the concerns of multiple parties in that area and ensure that they get enough density to actually build the infrastructure they need to do that development, but do it in a way that's sensible and respectful of the neighbors. And the other thing too is the DNR is moving ahead with plans to finally fix the channelization in that stream. And the other thing that didn't come up today, there's actually 2 upstream projects that are being done too that are going to reduce the speed of the flows coming down in a heavy rain event. That's so besides what they're doing down in the floodplain itself, they're doing some things upstream that are really going to help as well. And if you're watching this and you're living in the Interlochen area or the Manor Lakes area, you should know that you're actually probably going to be far better off as a result. Not necessarily this development. I think that's going to be pretty neutral to what you're doing, but more importantly, the channelization, the work being done upstream. I think we're going to finally take care of some of those serious issues that have been filling in your lakes, and there's no good answers for that. I know it's been frustrating for all the people along there. So a whole host of issues. We got out there, like I said, at 11:15. As always, I welcome your questions. Feel free to give me any feedback, and if you're in the neighborhoods and you're seeing this, I'm going to try and follow up with a note with a little bit more technical details for you. But in the meantime, just kind of know sometime this week I'll get that out. It's if you're fearing the worst from this development being approved, I don't think it's going to be that particularly bad. I hope it's outstanding. I think if the developer comes through with conceptually what they were talking about, it is going to be really good. So don't worry about selling your townhome fire sale prices right now. It's not going to be anything that bad, but we'll continue doing our best for you. And the other thing too, a lot of talk about the areas that's truly in the floodplain, turning it into park space. I don't know if that's necessarily ever going to happen, but what I would say is we're going to have to run some utilities through there, which means we're going to need utility easements, and that's sometimes a good low-cost way for the community to put trails through an area, so maybe get a bike trail extended along the creek right there. And long-term, my vision is to connect your neighborhoods to the rest of the city. What I'd really like to see is a safe crossing at 36th Avenue, potentially what's called a cycle track running along 36th Avenue to a eventual bridge that will hopefully connect Harriet Bishop to the rest of the trail system. It would create a safe and effective way to connect you to the entire Rochester Park system. It could be done over the course of a few years. It'd be a wonderful amenity for your community. So I think there's some good stuff that's going to come out of this too. Thank you so much for listening. As always, if you have any questions, let me know. I will catch you next time.